رمضان تجلى وابتسم طوبى للعبد إذا اغتنم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. آمين يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. I'm sure you've all heard and you've also watched on social media what is happening in Masjid Al Aqsa. And it's become a regular occurrence in the month of Ramadan that when Ramadan comes, the occupying forces, they barge into one of the holiest, amongst the holiest sites in Islam, and they target those worshippers inside the masjid. And it has become a regular occurrence. So what I actually want to speak about in this brief talk is, why is Masjid Al Aqsa so sacred? And to Muslims, why is Masjid Al Aqsa so important? And what separates Masjid Al Aqsa and the suffering that is happening in Masjid Al Aqsa from the oppression that is taking place in other parts of the world? Last week we spoke about Maryam Salamullah alayha, if you remember. And she grew up in the tutelage of her father figure, which was Zakaria alayhi salam. And I told you that Zakaria built for Maryam a mihrab, a small chamber. And where was that chamber built? It was built in Masjid Al Aqsa. I told you that when she gave birth to Isa alayhi salam, that miraculous birth, and she went back to her nation, where did her nation gather? They all gathered in Masjid Al Aqsa. And when they said, لَقَدْ جِئْتِ شَيْئًا فَرِيًّا, Maryam, what have you done? Those questions that were posed to Maryam Salamullah alayha, they were posed in Masjid Al Aqsa. And when that newborn baby, Isa alayhi salam, spoke up and defended his mother, and he said, Inni Abdullah, I am the slave of Allah. Where did he speak up? He spoke up in Masjid Al Aqsa. And when Isa alayhi salam will once again be the return of Isa alayhi salam, the return of Isa alayhi salam will also start from Masjid Al Aqsa. You know, in Medina, the ulama say that in Madinatul Munawwara there is not a single inch of land in all of Medina except that a companion of Rasulullah or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself stepped foot on. He walked on. There is not a single inch of land in Medina except that the blessed companions walked on those lands or the Prophet ﷺ himself walked on. And this is why Imam Malik, rahimahullah, Malik ibn Anas, he lived for 90 years. And he was from Medina. He was born in Medina, he died in Medina. And he lived in Medina for 90 years. In those 90 years, never once did he walk the streets of Medina with sandals on. And when he was asked, why do you do this? He said, I don't want to walk with sandals on the same streets that my beloved walked on, that the companions walked on. And in Medina, it is said that there is not a single tree except that the Prophet ﷺ either received revelation under that tree or he praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala under that tree. But this is about Medina. But when it comes to Masjid Al Aqsa, it is said that there is not a single inch of land in Masjid Al Aqsa except that a prophet of Allah walked on that land. In Medina, there is not an inch of land except that a companion or Rasulullah walked. In Masjid Al Aqsa, there is not a single inch of land except that a prophet of Allah walked. And when the Prophet ﷺ, he went on that very special journey to Mi'raj, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet was in Mecca. Allah could have taken him to that journey, that ascension could have happened from Mecca, but it didn't happen from Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ went from Mecca all the way to Masjid Al Aqsa. And then from Masjid Al Aqsa he went to the heavens. So in other words, the connecting point between the heavens and the earth was Masjid Al Aqsa. And it is said, and you know, every masjid has its uniqueness, has a khasa, a specialty. And one of the specialties of Masjid Al Aqsa is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gathered all the souls of every single prophet from Adam to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every single prophet was gathered in Masjid Al Aqsa and they all prayed salah together. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam led that salah. Dawood alayhi salam, if he was to speak about the blessings, we could go on for many hours. Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, he made a dua to Allah. And he said to Allah, he said, "O Allah, that I ask you that till the day of judgment, every single believer who comes to Masjid Al Aqsa and he prays salah in Masjid Al Aqsa, O Allah, I want you to purify him from his sins like he has just been born. Just as he has just been given birth by his mother. Purify him from his sins." This was the dua of the Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. And this week, of course, I wanted to speak about Ibrahim, but inshallah that's going to be tomorrow now. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he stood up to his people, when he took a stance against shirk, and he destroyed those idols, eventually he was persecuted. He was pushed out of his land. And the Quran tells us, وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا, that we sent Ibrahim towards a land that we blessed. But not only that, بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا لِلْعَالَمِينَ, we blessed it for entire mankind. In Surah Al-Isra, Allah says, سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله. He describes Masjid Al Aqsa as that place which we have blessed its surroundings. So not only Masjid Al Aqsa is blessed, but its surroundings are blessed as well. Musa alayhi salam, he's another prophet. He's the prophet that is mentioned the most times in the Quran. He is mentioned, no prophet is mentioned as many times as Musa alayhi salam is mentioned in the Quran. In a hadith that is brought to us by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he says that when Musa alayhi salam was about to depart this world, he made a dua to Allah. And the dua that he made to Allah was, Ya Rabb, let me die as close to Masjid Al Aqsa as possible. And the words of the hadith are that let me die as close to Masjid Al Aqsa, so close that if I was to throw a stone, it would reach Masjid Al Aqsa. So Masjid Al Aqsa is a sacred land, and what happens in Masjid Al Aqsa, it should have an impact on every single believer. And if you see the destruction that is happening in Masjid Al Aqsa and it doesn't change anything, it doesn't impact your heart, then there is something fundamentally wrong with your iman. And every one of us should make ourselves a part of the Palestinian cause. Now, one of the phrases that I often hear the most is, what can I do for Palestine? What can I do for Masjid Al Aqsa? Or that I cannot do anything meaningful for Masjid Al Aqsa. For instance, there is a small initiative like boycott a certain type of dates that are produced by the occupiers, or that share a message about Masjid Al Aqsa, or maybe just campaign about Masjid Al Aqsa in your school or in a public place. And the question we ask ourselves is, well, in the grand scheme of things, what is this going to do? How is this going to change anything? And for this, I want to remind you of a very famous incident that took place at the time of Dawood alayhi salam. Now, every prophet was given a specialty. Yusuf was given, alayhi salam, was given the ability to interpret dreams. Dawood alayhi salam, his specialty was that Allah gave him the ability to converse with animals. He could speak with animals. That was a miracle from Allah. It is mentioned that at the time of Dawood alayhi salam, there was this massive fire. And all the animals were trying to extinguish the fire. So you had the tigers come, you had the lions, you had the elephants. All the animals gathered to extinguish this big fire. And in the meantime, you had this small fly. An extremely small fly came to Dawood alayhi salam. And it says to Dawood that I want to contribute to extinguishing this fire. Dawood alayhi salam said, look how tiny you are. How are you going to contribute to the extinguishing of the fire? What meaning is your contribution going to have? What impact is your contribution going to have? And the fly responded and it said, look, my contribution may not be meaningful. It may not extinguish the fire. But when the names of those who helped extinguish the fire are written, my name will be on that list. So it's not necessarily about what are my actions going to change in the grand scheme of things. But try and understand, it is about being on the right side of history. It is about being comfortable that whatever Allah gave us, whatever power we had, we exhausted that power for this cause. And it may be a case that you're simply spreading the word. You're simply raising awareness for the cause. Will that change anything in the grand scheme of things? Maybe no. But it is about partaking in that cause. It is about being part of the Palestinian cause that matters. So, that's inshallah something as you leave, everyone should make the intention that we will do whatever is in our capacity to support and to contribute towards, inshallah, the liberation of Masjid Al Aqsa. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, he said, مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. Whoever from you sees evil, he sees bad happening, then stop it with your hand. As in, physically do something to stop that. Take physical action if it is within your ability. And then the Prophet said, فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ. If you don't have the ability to physically do something, for whatever reason, then فَبِلِسَانِهِ. Then try and stop it with your tongue. Try and speak about it. Try and raise awareness. Try and tell people. And the Prophet ﷺ went one step further. And he said, فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ. If for whatever reason you cannot stop evil with your tongue, then he said, فَبِقَلْبِهِ. Then in your hearts, have hatred towards that evil. Have malice in your hearts. have a dislike in your heart for that evil. And then he said, وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. This is the lowest level of Iman. This is a level that no one should aspire for. We should all aspire for the first two levels. I make dua, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to contribute, allow us to be a part of this amazing cause. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see the day in our lives where Masjid Al Aqsa is liberated. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to pray in Masjid Al Aqsa, a Masjid Al Aqsa that is liberated. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us if we have not been able to do enough for the Palestinian cause. Ameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam wa ilayka yarji'u as-salam. Hayyina Rabbana bis-salam wa adkhilna dar as-salam. تباركت ربنا وتعاليت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وإيمانا كاملا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.
رمضان تجلى